Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the weight of someone's presence before they even spoke a word? That moment when your entire being seems to recognize something familiar yet indefinable in another person, as if some ancient part of you is whispering secrets that your rational mind cannot yet comprehend. This is not intuition in the conventional sense, nor is it some mystical parlor trick that belongs only to the gifted few. What you are experiencing is the natural capacity of consciousness to recognize itself across the apparent boundaries of separate bodies, separate minds, separate lives. Today we will explore together how to awaken this dormant ability that already lives within you, how to read the soul signature that every human being carries like an invisible fingerprint, and how this recognition can transform not only how you relate to others, but how you understand the very nature of your own existence. When we speak of reading souls, we must first understand what we are truly observing. The soul is not some ethereal vapor floating around the body, waiting to be detected by special equipment or supernatural abilities. The soul is the fundamental organizing principle of consciousness, as it expresses itself through the unique vessel of each human life. It is the coherent pattern that underlies all the apparent chaos of personality, the stable frequency that resonates beneath the surface fluctuations of mood and circumstance. Think of it like this. If you were to listen to a symphony, you could become distracted by the individual notes, the occasional discordance, the varying volumes and tempos. But if you allow your awareness to expand, you begin to perceive the underlying composition, the invisible architecture that gives meaning to every single sound. The soul is precisely this underlying composition of a human being. Most people live their entire lives relating only to the surface notes, the personality structures, the social masks, the conditioned responses that form the visible layer of human interaction. They hear the words, observe the gestures, make judgments based on appearance and behavior, but they never tune into the deeper frequency that is actually orchestrating all these surface phenomena. This is why so many relationships remain superficial, why communication feels hollow, why we can spend years with someone and still feel like we don't really know them. We are relating to the performance rather than the performer, to the wave rather than the ocean that creates it. But consciousness, in its essential nature, recognizes consciousness. Just as water naturally finds its level, awareness naturally attunes to awareness. The challenge is not in developing some new supernatural ability, but in removing the accumulated layers of mental conditioning that prevent us from accessing what is already naturally present. We have been trained since childhood to focus our attention on the external, on the labels, on the categories, on the stories people tell about themselves. We have learned to listen to words, rather than feeling into the space from which those words arise. We have been conditioned to see bodies rather than sensing the animating presence that gives those bodies life and meaning. The first key to reading souls is learning to shift your attention from content to context, from the what to the who, from the information being shared to the quality of consciousness that is sharing it. When someone speaks to you, instead of immediately processing their words for meaning, agreement, or disagreement, try this. Allow your awareness to soften and expand, as if you were listening not just with your ears, but with your entire being. Feel into the energetic quality behind their voice. Notice the rhythm, the texture, the emotional undertones that exist independently of the actual words being spoken. You are beginning to tune into their soul signature, the unique frequency through which their consciousness expresses itself in this physical dimension. I want to pause for a moment and ask you directly. Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate sense of recognition, as if you had known them long before you actually met? That moment when the rational mind insists this is a stranger, but something deeper in you responds with profound familiarity, even comfort or love. This is your soul recognizing another soul, your consciousness acknowledging the fundamental unity that exists beneath the surface appearance of separation. I know this might sound abstract or even impossible in a world that has taught us to trust only what can be measured and proven. You look around and see billions of separate individuals, each locked in their own private experience, each fundamentally unknowable to the others. The isolation can feel overwhelming, the sense that we are all islands of consciousness floating in a vast ocean of indifference. But what if this apparent separation is itself the illusion, and what you are learning to perceive is the deeper truth of our interconnected nature? I want you to know that your capacity to sense the souls of others is not only real, but essential for navigating this complex human experience with authenticity and compassion. When you learn to read the soul signature of another person, you are not invading their privacy or violating some sacred boundary. You are simply recognizing what has always been true, that consciousness is not actually contained within the boundaries of individual bodies, but is a field in which we all participate, a shared space in which recognition and communion are not only possible, but inevitable. That's why I'd like to invite you to share an experience in the comments below. Think of a time when you felt an immediate, inexplicable connection with someone, when your soul seemed to recognize theirs before your mind could make sense of it. You can simply copy this phrase and complete it. I knew I was sensing their soul when, by sharing this, you not only validate your own capacity for soul recognition, but you also encourage someone else who might be watching this video, wondering if they are imagining these profound moments of connection. Your comment might be exactly the confirmation someone needs to trust their own deeper perceptions, to know that these experiences of recognition are not fantasy, but glimpses of a more fundamental reality. This invisible community of soul recognizers, spread throughout the world, strengthens every time we acknowledge what we have always known, but rarely dared to speak. Like tuning forks resonating with each other across space, when we recognize the souls of others, we activate our own soul recognition, creating ripples of awakening that extend far beyond our immediate awareness. Now, let's continue exploring the practical dimensions of this recognition, the specific ways you can cultivate and refine this natural capacity that is your birthright as a conscious being. The second key to reading souls lies in understanding that every soul carries what we might call an emotional signature, a consistent quality of feeling that permeates their entire being regardless of their current circumstances or mood. This is not the same as personality, which can change dramatically depending on context, stress levels, or life stages. The emotional signature is more fundamental, more stable, more revelatory of who this person actually is beneath all the layers of adaptation and conditioning. Some souls carry the signature of deep peace, a quality of stillness that seems to emanate from their very cells. Others resonate with creative fire, an effervescent quality that makes the air around them feel charged with possibility. Still others embody a kind of earthy wisdom, a grounded presence that makes you feel safer and more real just by being in their vicinity. Learning to perceive these emotional signatures requires a different kind of attention than we normally employ in social interaction. Instead of listening for agreement or disagreement, instead of evaluating whether you like or dislike what someone is saying, try feeling into the emotional climate they create simply by existing in the space. This is not about reading their current emotions, which may be influenced by a difficult day or a recent conversation. This is about sensing the underlying emotional frequency that has been consistent in them probably since childhood, the fundamental feeling tone through which they experience and interpret reality. You can practice this anywhere, in line at the grocery store, sitting in a coffee shop, walking through a crowded street. Without staring or making anyone uncomfortable, allow your awareness to expand and include the people around you. Notice that each person creates a slightly different feeling in the space, a unique emotional atmosphere that has nothing to do with what they are doing and everything to do with who they are. The businessman rushing past might carry a signature of driven intensity that you can feel, even if he appears calm on the surface. The elderly woman feeding pigeons might emanate a quality of gentle acceptance that touches something in you before you even make eye contact. This is not about making judgments or creating categories of better or worse. Every soul signature has its own beauty, its own purpose, its own contribution to the larger symphony of human consciousness. The driven intensity serves evolution and progress. The gentle acceptance provides healing and sanctuary. The creative fire ignites inspiration and transformation. You are not evaluating these signatures, but learning to recognize them, to feel into the unique gift that each consciousness brings to the shared human experience. The third dimension of soul reading involves recognizing what we might call the evolutionary trajectory of a person's consciousness. Every soul is on a journey, engaged in a specific curriculum of growth and awakening that is unique to their particular path. Some souls are just beginning to question the assumptions they inherited from family and culture. Others are in the middle of a profound dismantling, releasing old identities and beliefs that no longer serve their expansion. Still others have moved into a phase of integration, learning to embody the wisdom they have gained through difficult experiences and inner work. When you tune in to someone's evolutionary trajectory, you begin to sense not just who they are now, but the direction in which their consciousness is moving. You can feel whether they are in a phase of opening or closing, expansion or contraction, questioning or certainty. This perception allows you to meet them where they actually are, rather than where you think they should be, or where you need them to be for your own comfort. It cultivates a quality of compassion that recognizes that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of awareness, and that judgment is not only unhelpful, but fundamentally misunderstands the nature of spiritual growth. You might encounter someone who seems stuck in patterns of blame and victimhood, and your mind immediately wants to dismiss them or fix them or distance yourself from their negativity. But when you tune into their evolutionary trajectory, you might sense that they are actually in the early stages of recognizing their own power, that the blame phase is a necessary step in their journey toward taking responsibility for their life. Your recognition of their deeper process allows you to respond with patience rather than irritation, understanding rather than judgment. Or you might meet someone who appears to have everything together, who speaks eloquently about spiritual concepts and seems to embody a high level of consciousness. But when you feel into their evolutionary trajectory, you sense a kind of spiritual bypassing, a way of using spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with unhealed emotional wounds. Again, this recognition is not about judgment, but about authentic relating. You can appreciate their genuine insights while also feeling the areas where their growth is still needed, which allows you to engage with both their wisdom and their humanity. The fourth aspect of soul reading involves recognizing the core wound, or the fundamental gift that shapes how a person moves through the world. Every soul carries both a primary wound that came through early experiences of limitation or trauma, and a corresponding gift that emerges as they learn to transform that wound into wisdom. These are not separate phenomena, but two sides of the same coin, the specific curriculum through which this consciousness is learning to evolve and contribute to the larger whole. Someone who carries the wound of abandonment often develops the gift of profound empathy and the ability to create safe spaces for others. Someone whose core wound involves powerlessness frequently develops exceptional skills in empowering others and creating systemic change. The person who experienced deep rejection may become a master at seeing and celebrating the hidden gifts in people who feel invisible or undervalued. The wound and the gift are intimately connected, and learning to perceive both allows you to understand not only what someone has endured, but what they have the potential to offer the world. This recognition transforms how you relate to the difficult people in your life. That person who seems to trigger your every insecurity might be carrying the wound of inadequacy and is unconsciously trying to make others feel inadequate as a way of managing their own pain. When you see the wound beneath the behavior, compassion becomes possible even when boundaries are still necessary. That colleague who seems to dominate every conversation might be carrying the wound of invisibility and has not yet learned how to feel seen and valued without taking up all the space. Understanding the deeper dynamic does not mean you have to tolerate inappropriate behavior, but it does mean you can respond from wisdom rather than reactivity. Equally important is learning to recognize the gifts that people carry, especially the gifts they themselves may not yet recognize or value. Many people are walking around with extraordinary capacities for healing, creativity, leadership, or wisdom that they have never fully claimed because their gifts were not recognized or valued in their family of origin or their current environment. When you learn to see these hidden gifts, you become a catalyst for other people's awakening to their own potential. A simple recognition, a moment of genuine seeing, can sometimes unlock years of self-doubt and allow someone to step into a fuller expression of who they truly are. But perhaps the deepest level of soul reading involves recognizing the fundamental nature of consciousness itself as it expresses through each unique individual. Beneath the personality structures, beneath the emotional signatures, beneath the wounds and gifts and evolutionary trajectories, there is something that is the same in everyone. The basic awareness that makes experience possible, the consciousness that is looking through every pair of eyes, the presence that animates every human form. This is what the mystics point to when they speak of the unity that underlies the apparent diversity of life. When you learn to recognize this fundamental consciousness in others, something extraordinary happens in your relationships. You begin to see past the surface dramas, the personality conflicts, the differences in belief and opinion, and you start relating to the essence of who people are. This does not mean you become naive about human psychology or stop maintaining appropriate boundaries. It means you develop the capacity to hold two levels of awareness simultaneously. The relative level where differences and difficulties are real and need to be navigated skillfully, and the absolute level where the fundamental unity of consciousness is always present and available for recognition. This dual awareness is perhaps the greatest gift of learning to read souls. It allows you to engage fully with the human drama, while never losing touch with the deeper truth that connects all beings. You can feel frustrated with someone's behavior, while simultaneously recognizing the consciousness that is struggling within the limitations of their current conditioning. You can disagree passionately with someone's ideas, while never forgetting the awareness that is seeking truth through their particular lens of perception. The paradox of soul reading is that the more clearly you see others, the more clearly you see yourself. As you learn to recognize the patterns of consciousness expressing through different individuals, you become aware of your own patterns, your own signature, your own wound and gift, your own evolutionary trajectory. You realize that the consciousness you are recognizing in others is the same consciousness that is looking through your own eyes, that the soul you are reading in them is not fundamentally different from the soul that is reading. This recognition gradually dissolves the sense of separation that creates most of our suffering in relationships. You begin to understand that when you judge others, you are judging aspects of consciousness that also exist within yourself. When you feel compassion for someone else's struggle, you are extending compassion to your own struggle. When you celebrate someone else's growth and awakening, you are acknowledging the same potential that exists within your own being. The practical implications of this understanding are profound. Conflicts become opportunities for deeper recognition. Difficult relationships become invitations to develop greater compassion and wisdom. Even brief encounters with strangers become moments of potential communion, opportunities to practice the art of conscious recognition. You begin to move through the world as a soul recognizing other souls, contributing to the awakening of consciousness wherever you go, simply by seeing clearly, by feeling deeply, by recognizing truly. This does not happen overnight, of course. Learning to read souls is like developing any other capacity. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. Sometimes you will project your own patterns onto others and mistake your projections for soul reading. Sometimes you will be so caught up in your own emotional reactivity that you cannot access the clarity needed for genuine recognition. Sometimes you will use your insights about others as weapons rather than bridges, forgetting that true soul reading always leads to greater compassion, never to greater judgment. But as you continue to practice this art, as you continue to refine your capacity for recognition and attune your awareness to the deeper dimensions of consciousness, something begins to shift in the quality of your entire life experience. Loneliness becomes less possible when you can recognize the consciousness that connects all beings. Fear becomes less compelling when you can see the fundamental goodness that exists in even the most wounded souls. Love becomes less conditional when you recognize that what you love in others is the same consciousness that you are, expressing itself in countless beautiful and sometimes broken ways. The world begins to reveal itself as a vast community of consciousness exploring itself through the diversity of human experience. Every person you encounter becomes a teacher, a mirror, a fellow traveler on the pathless path of awakening. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice the art of conscious relating, to offer the gift of genuine seeing, to receive the gift of being seen in return. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to understand that learning to read the souls of others is not ultimately about others at all. It is about awakening to your own true nature, recognizing your own essence, claiming your own place in the infinite web of consciousness that is perpetually recognizing itself through countless eyes, countless hearts, countless moments of authentic meeting between souls who have never truly been separate. Trust this capacity that lives within you. Trust your ability to see beyond the surface, to feel into the depth, to recognize the consciousness that animates all life. Trust that every moment of genuine recognition contributes to the healing and awakening of our shared human experience. And trust that as you learn to read the souls of others, you are simultaneously learning to read the soul of the cosmos itself, the vast intelligence that is expressing itself as the entire beautiful, complex, sometimes painful, always meaningful dance of existence. If these reflections on soul recognition and conscious relating touched something within you, know that you are not alone in sensing the deeper dimensions of human connection. This path of seeing beyond the surface can feel isolating when those around you remain focused only on the external appearances and social conventions. It's precisely for this reason that we've created this safe space, this refuge for those who sense there is more to human relating than what meets the eye. By subscribing to the channel, you become part of a conscious community of people who, like you, are learning to navigate relationships from a place of soul recognition rather than surface judgment. Each new video we share is like a reminder of your own deepest knowing, offering new ways to understand and embody the art of conscious relating in a world that often seems to have forgotten the sacred nature of every human encounter. We're not here to offer quick techniques or simplistic formulas for reading people. We're here to explore together the profound mystery of consciousness, recognizing itself, to support each other in developing the capacity for authentic seeing that transforms every relationship into an opportunity for mutual awakening. If you feel called to see more deeply, to relate more authentically, to recognize the souls that surround you in every moment, this channel is your companion on that journey. Subscribe and allow yourself to be nourished by reflections that honor both the complexity and the unity of human consciousness. Together, we form a network of soul recognizers, each practicing the art of conscious relating in our own lives, but connected by our shared commitment to seeing truly, loving deeply, and recognizing the divine consciousness that looks through every pair of eyes. A simple click on the subscription button is a quiet affirmation that says, "I too am committed to this deeper way of seeing. I too am practicing the art of soul recognition." And that, in a world that often reduces people to categories and judgments, is a revolutionary act of love.